Hey guys, I'm still trying to get these upper control arms together. If you notice, on the left side is one of the pivot shaft end caps, the new refurbishing kits that I bought for these. The one on the right is the old cap. I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but the one on the left, the threads go out further on the end. And I also think that they are slightly different diameter. It didn't show a whole lot of difference when I micrometered them, but they would not screw in to these new control arms. I kept trying to turn them into the end of these, and they wouldn't fit. They'd go in about a half a turn, 3/4 of a turn, felt like they were going to strip, and then they'd go sideways. They wouldn't straighten up. So what I ended up doing was cleaning the old ones up, threading one of them in there part of the way. I did use the new shafts that came with the kit. They would thread into the old caps, and once I got them started, I turned this one in about a turn and a half, 2 turns, left the bolts out of these shafts so that I could spin it into this cap. Then I started this cap on this end onto the threads on the end of the shaft, because this actually tightens up on this shaft as well as tightens into the control arm. So I'd have to tighten a little bit, tighten a little bit. You don't want to get too carried away and actually pull the edges of this in. And the Ford shop manual actually recommends that you put a spacer in here, but I kept a real close eye on it with my tape measure, my micrometer. And once I got it all the way secured, both ends of it, excuse me, let me get this to where you can see it, where they are screwed down flush with the edge on both sides. You don't want to tighten them much more than that, because basically you're out of threads, and at that point you're just stripping. So once I had this thing in place and everything tightened up, I actually was able, without the bolts in here, to turn this shaft one way or the other to get it centered. And the way that I centered it was I took my micrometer and measured. Of course, the bolts weren't in there at that point. Hang on a second, let me grab one. I actually took the micrometer and measured from the end cap, where the end of it was outside, to the inside edge of this hole. Then I measured the other side the same way, and I actually spun this a half a turn at a time until I had those two dimensions as equal as I could get them. One of the performance modifications for this was they said you could take and turn this thing like one full turn, one direction or the other, and that would actually pull the control arm forward or back. I was too afraid that I was going to get confused and turn it the wrong way, so I basically just centered them. What that does, it gives you more caster, which in turn would give you more negative camber whenever they're doing the suspension alignment. But I thought, well, I've already had enough difficulties out of this, so I'm just going to go ahead and put them centered like I've got this one. Once I had it centered, I went ahead and turned it just the way you see it now, and I already had my bolts marked which hole they came out of on these shafts. They're splined when they fit down in here so that they actually latch into place, so when you tighten the nuts up inside the engine bay, these heads won't turn. Well, I got these two in here, set them on my bench vise and hammered them down in there to where I'm sure they were flush. The next step, right before I get ready to put these things in, is I'm going to take and do like the guys in some of these suspension forums I've been looking at for these Ford cars recommend us put a small tack weld right here so that this head wouldn't turn if for some reason those splines didn't catch, or you got really torquing down on those nuts, or you for some reason couldn't get them loose. You don't want this nut to spin, or this bolt to spin, because, okay, what would happen, this is going to be kind of inaccessible because this actually sits underneath the car when this is in place. So if that started spinning, it's going to be kind of tough to get a wrench on it. So I'm going to go ahead, before I put these in, I'm going to do a tack weld like it said right here, and I also recommended doing one small tack weld somewhere up on top of the nut here where it hits this arm. And what that will do is, as this thing cycles up and down, it will keep those nuts from loosening up. Those threads are really, they call it an Acme thread. They're a real funny pitched thread. I looked and I didn't have any threaders anywhere close to even that tight pitch. I was going to re-thread it to where the bigger ones would fit, the newer ones. But I gave up on it, and I just went ahead and cleaned up my old ones. They were fine. I did clean the rubber O-rings up inside of them and re-lubricated those. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and put you up on the tripod here for just a minute and I'm going to keep cleaning on these for a second or two and see if I can get this other one back together. But that's basically what it looks like whenever it's cleaned up and reassembled. Then it will basically sit in the car. It's kind of hard to do with one hand standby. It will basically go like that. And see, once the spring and everything is in place, the whole thing basically sits here and goes to your upper ball joint, and then your spindle is actually below that. So with that done, I'm going to go ahead and flip you guys off. Actually, not flip you guys off. Turn the camera off for just a minute, and I'll bring you back whenever I've got this other one cleaned up and about ready to assemble it, and I'll go through the assembly process with you. So stand by.